자, 그러면 시간이 거의 다 된 것 같습니다. 오늘 첫 번째 세션 이어나가도록 하겠습니다. 첫 번째 세션에 좌장 소개해드리면 좌장께서 이 첫 번째 세션을 진행을 해 주시도록 하겠습니다. 첫 번째 세션의 좌장은 우리 호남대학교 박인혜 교수님의 좌장으로 이어가도록 하겠습니다. 박인혜 교수님 부탁드리겠습니다.
Welcome and good morning to all ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to express my sincere appreciation for you joining us today on the second day of the Sports Science Congress. I am In-Hae Park, professor at Honam University, Department of Sports Leisure. It's a great honor for me to be the chair of this session 1 with two great presenters. Professor Song-Young Park from University of Nebraska, United States, and Dr. Hyun-Chul Yoon from Fukushikan University, Japan. Session 1 is themed Danger of Sedentary Life and Dynamics of Coordination. So please let me introduce you to the first speaker of session 1. Dr. Song-Young Park is professor at University of Nebraska at Omaha, School of Health and Kinesiology. He also has been jointly appointed as Courtesy Associate Professor at the Department of Cellular and Integrative Physiology at University of Nebraska Medical Center. Professor Park is especially interested in the complex interaction of endothelial function, oxidative stress, and vascular function in terms of blood pressure regulation in disease populations such as peripheral artery disease, heart failure, and hypertension. Subjects regarding exercise programs and its relation with body composition, blood pressure, cardiovascular function, and disease are some of his numerous recent research topics. So today, Professor Park will share with us his investigation. Effects of sedentary life on cardiovascular disease. So please welcome Professor Song-Young Park from University of Nebraska.
Thank you for the nice introduction, Dr. Park. So today I will talk about the post-COVID-19 pandemic and sedentary lifestyle impact of prolonged sitting in health. So before I talk about my research presentation, let me briefly explain about the university and the city I live. So I'm from Omaha, Nebraska. So as you can see here, Omaha is located in the middle of the U.S. So Omaha is famous for Warren Buffett, who is the world's most richest guy. And this picture is the downtown of Omaha. And Omaha is also well known for the U.S. College World Series. So the location is in the middle in the U.S. So we can have the College World Series every year in Omaha. Also, Omaha is well known for the Omaha steak. So a lot of people think Texas steak is famous, but Omaha steak is very famous as well. So if you have any chance to visit U.S., you can try this Omaha steaks. Okay, let's talk about today's presentation. So I will talk about my research background briefly, which is cardiovascular disease and also post-COVID-19 and sedentary lifestyle. After that, I will talk about my research result. And also, I will show you some of my major research methodology and also research. After that, we will have a Q&A session. So cardiovascular disease, as you know, the cardiovascular disease is number one cause of death. And as you can see here, heart disease is number one, and the second cause of death is cancer. And recently, COVID-19 could be third. But traditionally, the heart disease and cancer, those two are the major cause of death. If you look at this right picture, this is the map of U.S. and this picture represents the cardiovascular prevalence. As you can see here, the Midwest and southern part, there is higher rate of cardiovascular disease. And this can be affected by education, ethnics, race, and also lifestyle, such as diet and physical activity. As you know, the southern part, a lot of people, they try to eat more greasy, high-fat diet and less physical activity. And the U.S. government announced that in 2035, U.S. government may spend $1.1 trillion to help treat cardiovascular disease. So cardiovascular disease is a big burden for U.S. and also in the world. And as you know, we all had spent a really hard time due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And Luna Press et al., they show us a nice study which analyzed 104 studies, which is about the sedentary lifestyle after COVID-19. And what they found is, if you take a look at this left side of the picture, so the United States, Spain, Italy, Germany, China, and Canada, all these countries, they increased sedentary time significantly. If you take a look at the United States, almost 500 minutes per day has been increased as sedentary lifestyle. So that means people just stay at home longer and they do less exercise or physical activity. This is a big problem for the older adults as well. Older adults, if you take a look at the y-axis, there's even higher sedentary lifetime per day. So people work at home and they also stay at home and do less exercise. And also, due to the COVID-19, a lot of these people, they work from home and we call it remote work. And the problem is that a lot of these populations, they are white collars. And we know that a lot of white collars, 1 out of 4 people, they have cardiovascular disease. This is the big problem. Why? 10% of the US occupational groups, they are white collars. So they are working at home or they are office workers. So previously, people thought if we have reduced physical activity or increased sedentary time, that is bad things. But recently, a lot of studies out there, they suggest that sitting itself is kind of like smoking. So people think sitting has also negative effect, not just to reduce the physical activity. And this, the population, such as office workers, they spend, if you take a look at here, they spend 75% of their working hours as sitting position. So only 25% of their work hours, they are moving or walking. So this is a big problem in terms of their sedentary lifestyle. So sitting, why sitting is bad? There's a nice study from Paulson, and they suggested that these guys are vascular biomechanics. And what they found is during sitting, as you know, so our vascular the symmetry can be changing. So if we have these are the legs. So as you can see here, if we have standing position, our legs are straight, and which means our blood vessel is also straight. During walking, we have 110 degrees, and also it can be 180. So we can increase our blood flow to our legs. However, if you take a look at this sitting, we usually have 90 degrees. So if you look at your legs, you maintain 90 degrees of your legs, which impairs significant amount of blood flow to your legs. And if you have decreased blood flow to your legs, it reduces blood flow, and which increases turbulence blood flow in your vasculature, in your legs. Then what happens? You will increase vasoconstrictor metabolites and chemicals in your blood vessels, so which will increase your blood vessel constriction. And also, this decreased blood flow will attenuate endothelial function. Endothelial function means endothelial cells inside your blood vessels, which produce a lot of chemicals which cause vasodilation. So if you have vasodilation, you can have more blood flow in your legs. And also decrease this blood flow will impair your microvascular function in your periphery. So all these factors can increase risk of atherosclerosis formation. So you will have higher chance to have vascular disease. And as you know that, so we are sitting in the office environment. And the office, you are not only working in the office space. There's a lot of people out there. And when we breathe in air, which includes oxygen. But when we breathe out, we produce CO2. So like a lecture hall or like a podium here, not many people here right now, but I mean, usually there's a lot of people and we can easily increase CO2 level in the podium. And also there's studies out there, increased CO2 can impair our vascular function. And if you can see here, 400 ppm of carbon dioxide, which is fine, which is completely fine. But in over 1,000 ppm, which can cause drowsiness or fatigue. So U.S. Central Disease CDC announced that over 1,500 ppm of carbon dioxide can reduce endothelial function and also increased cardiovascular disease. So I was interested in examining the impact of prolonged sitting and especially the mechanism of prolonged sitting on the vascular function. But I was not the only person. So this prolonged sitting and negative effect of prolonged sitting already been examined back in 1983. But as you can imagine, in 1983, we don't have really good equipment to measure cardiovascular function. So Schwartz et al., they performed a study and they measured blood flow in the leg during sitting. And as you can see here, they have almost 90 degrees, almost like close to 100 degrees of their legs and during sitting. And they measure blood flow. As you can see here, dive blood flow has been significantly decreased. And also there's increased calf blood pooling. The reason why, if you are maintaining seated position for certain hours, your legs are swollen. So you can feel uncomfortable. So this is due to this blood pooling. And also my collaborator, Jaume Padilla at the University of Missouri Medical, and they performed a nice study back in 2009, and they measured endothelial function in the blood vessels, how prolonged sitting can affect vascular function. And what they found is they have two conditions. One condition is supine position, which means they just lay down, and they have good blood flow. And the other group is the upright seated position, like your position that you are sitting now. And what they found is, if you take a look at these figures, popliteal artery, FMD. The popliteal artery means your blood vessel in your legs, behind your knee. As you can see here, control group, the supine position, there's no changes in terms of endothelial function in your leg blood vessels. However, upright seated position, there's a decreased endothelial function. And also, the shear stress in the blood flow in the leg has been significantly reduced. So for this study, they use ultrasound, so we can trust the result. Okay. So the previous literature summary is prolonged sitting reduced blood flow and increased venous pooling, which is coupled with increased peripheral vascular resistance and blood pressure. Also, prolonged sitting attenuates arterial shear rate, endothelial function, and lower extremities. However, there's only limited studies out there which combine with prolonged sitting and also increased carbon dioxide. So I thought increased carbon dioxide and during prolonged sitting is more practical for our lifestyle. So we were the first group which studied prolonged sitting in the mild hypercapnic condition. And if you are interested in this study, you can Google this title, and we have podcast, and this study was featured as the best paper of the month. Okay. So we have two groups. One group is just sitting for 2.5 hours. The other group was sitting in the environment chamber, in like this picture, and we increased CO2 level. So we mimic our like lecture hall or some like crowded office conditions. And what we found is, as you can see here, we measured endothelial function from leg and also the arms. So if you take a look at this arm endothelial function, the seated position without increased CO2 level, there is significantly decreased endothelial function. And also hyperchemic condition, which is increased CO2 level, also decreased endothelial function. And interesting thing was that the leg endothelial function was even more significantly reduced with the hyperchemic condition. So high CO2 levels, carbon dioxide level, can more severely attenuate our leg vascular function during prolonged sitting. We also measure leg skeletal muscle function with the near-infrared spectroscopy. So what we found is tissue oxygenation index was significantly reduced by this sitting, but high carbon dioxide level could not change any further. Also, we measured oxygen recovery capacity in the legs with this mirrors, and we could not find any the differences compared to just prolonged sitting without hyperchemic condition. So we all now know that the prolonged sitting is bad, and it's bad for our vascular function. Then we need to find how we can prevent these negative effects of this prolonged sitting. And the Jaume-Padilla group, they performed a study and they used the fidgeting. So fidgeting is just small movement. They thought the small movement may reduce or negate the negative effect of prolonged sitting. And this is their study design. So they said the fidgeting, and they lift their foot heels like 3 centimeters, and 1 minute of lifting every 4 minutes. So basically every 5 minutes they did fidgeting. To me, this is not the fidgeting, this is calf raise exercise. Anyways, they did this calf raise exercise every 5 minutes for 3 hours. Okay? And what they found is that this fidgeting, the calf raise, could restore cardiovascular function in the leg. And as you can see here, their blood flow in the popliteal artery has been restored. And also popliteal artery endothelial function has been increased by this fidgeting. So now we know that muscular contraction during prolonged sitting can negate negative effects of exercise. But can you do this fidgeting every 5 minutes while you're working? I don't think so. I don't think this is practical. So I thought we need to find the mechanism, how this fidgeting or muscular contraction can prevent or negate the negative effect of prolonged sitting. So I hypothesized that probably dural function during this physical movement, the contraction, may affect vascular function. So I was focused on the group 3 and group 4 muscle afferent. So if we do any muscular contraction, we stimulate group 3 and group 4 afferent. So group 3 afferent is just if we move like passively, like can you see my arms, please? So if I move like this is active move. Then we have stimulate group 3 and 4. So we stimulate the mechanoreceptors and also metaboreceptors because our muscle contraction can cause increase muscle metabolism. But if I passively move my arms like this, we don't increase any chemicals in our muscles or metabolites, but we change our muscle spindles and also blood vessel symmetry, which can send signals to our brain, and brain sends signals to our heart and say, hey, increase heart rate, increase blood flow, cardiac output. So I was focusing on this, the mechanism, and our brain, NTS, can increase sympathetic nervous systems and to block the parasympathetic activation. So with this hypothesis, we performed a study, and the title is Effect of Passive and Active Leg Movement to Interrupt Sitting in Mild Hyperchemic on cardiovascular function in healthy adults. So study design is the same as I mentioned in my previous study. We performed this study in the environment chamber, and one group is normal CO2 level, and the other was high CO2 level. But we have three different experimental conditions. The control is no movement, just sitting. The second was passive. We only want to stimulate group 3 afferent. And the last group was active, so we try to stimulate group 3 and 4, which is active muscle contraction. And then we measure the endothelial function in legs, arms, and also we measure microvascular function with near-infrared spectroscopy. We also measure mean femoral artery shear rate in legs, and we also did blood draw, and we measure all the blood chemicals, and we also measure the blood pooling in the legs. So here's the result. So popliteal artery endothelial function, as you can see here, if we have just sitting, there's decreased popliteal artery endothelial function. In the passive group, still decreased endothelial function in legs. But active group, we could negative effect from sitting, like Padilla's group. And also we measure from the arms to examine the systemic effect. We found the similar effects. And also in the muscle, we measure the microvascular function, and as you can see here, in the control group, just sitting, there's significant decrease skeletal muscle function. But interestingly, when we stimulate group 3, we could restore the skeletal muscle function. And active, as you can see, we could restore endothelial function, leg function. And we also measure the blood, the chemicals. And we hypothesized that probably passive and active muscle contraction can increase vasodilation chemicals. And as you can see here, control group, there is significant decrease of vasodilator marker, and passive also significant decrease vasodilators. However, in the active muscle contraction, group 3 and group 4 activation, we could maintain the vasodilators. And when we measure the vasoconstriction markers, there is no difference. And we calculated this vasodilators and vasoconstrictors, the ratio, as you can see here, control and passive, there is no difference. However, active, we could improve vasodilators and vasoconstrictor ratio. And we also measure the femoral artery blood flow. As you can see here, control and passive group, there is no difference. There's significant reduction in the blood flow in the femoral artery. But active, there's significant increase of blood flow. And we also measure the blood pooling in your leg. As you can see here, passive only group 3 activation could not restore blood pooling in the calf. But active movement could improve this blood pooling. So here's the summary for our study. So first, the negative impact of home sitting on lower extremity vascular function are further attained in mild hypercapnic environment. The second, group 3 afferent activation, which is by passive leg movement, can preserve microvascular function during prolonged sitting in mild hypercapnic condition. And group 3 and 4 activation, the afferent activation is required to negate the negative effect of prolonged sitting. Although these results are initially promising, but we cannot generalize to the office workers. So I think I have too much explanation. So let me move really quickly. Give me 5 more minutes. Okay. So as I said, we perform all these studies in healthy young individuals. However, I talk about the office workers. They are middle-aged to older age. They are more susceptible, and also they have higher risk of cardiovascular disease. So we recruited those office workers, and we performed the study. So we performed exact same study, and also we measured exact same measures, but we added this microneurography. So as I said, we tried to measure group 3 and group 4 afferent. However, there is no actual measure for that. And by using this microneurography, we directly measure group 3 and group 4 activation. And what we found is, here we go. So mean femoral artery shear stress was increased in the passive and active, but control group there's decrease. And popliteal artery FMD, control and passive there's all decrease. The active it could be restored. And brachial artery FMD all decreased. And interestingly, the skeletal muscle function was restored by passive, which was not found in young individuals. And here's conclusion. So this study showed that the group 3 activation can improve skeletal muscle function in middle-aged populations, office workers. But still, group 3 and group 4 activation, both activations require to negative effect of chromal seeding in these office workers and middle-aged. So by using this technology, we created an algorithm to measure those skeletal muscle oxygen utilization capacity using this smartwatch, and we recently filed the U.S. patent. And here's my research group. I'm working with 8 graduate students, and I recently awarded 2 R1s. And thank you for listening.
Thank you, Professor Park. A lot of information in such a short time. Due to some time restriction, we will have a separate time provided for discussion and Q&A. So please, be sure to hold on to your questions for the Q&A time. Thank you, Professor Park. Next honored speaker is Dr. Hyun-Chul Yoon from Kokushikan University, Graduate School of Sports System. Today, Dr. Yoon will share his research on changes in rowing motion and stretcher force at 2,000 meter race pace, a comparison of sliding type and fixed type rowing ergometers. Yes, so please welcome Dr. Hyun-Chul Yoon from Kokushikan University.
안녕하세요. 저는 일본에서 온 윤현철이라고 합니다. 지금 일본에서 제가 하고 있는 조종 연구에 대해서 오늘 간단하게 소개하고자 합니다. 잘 부탁드립니다. Hello, good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for providing with this great opportunity to present in my home country. My name is Hyun-Chul Yoon, invited by the Japan Society of Physical Education to give a lecture at the International Exchange Agreement Conference at the 35 International Sports Science Congress, Copenhagen, the 998 South Olympics. Today, I will be mainly discussing the boat research that I'm conducting. I'm sorry. Before going into the detail, allow me to provide a brief introduction about myself. In Korea, I studied rowing in junior high school and was an athlete for 40 years. Subsequently, driven by a desire to approach rowing scientifically, I came to Japan in 2040. Currently, I'm deeply involved in researching the field of road sports. Before going to the
조종 보트를 최고 속도로 올리기 위해 조종 보트를 최고 매일 3,000번의 돌을 젓고 매일 3,000번의 돌을 젓고
video explanation of rowing competition. So practice your currently swing is from documentary alive by TBS broadcasting station 10 years ago.
숨이 턱에 차오를 만큼 혹독한 연습 속에서 부상으로 몸에 달고잘지만
The last person to appear is me. I can do visualize okay. As seen in the video earlier, rowing is an outdoor sport, and training can be influenced by weather and environmental conditions. When actual on-water training is not feasible, rows rely on land-based training using rowing aerometers. So enables them to maintain rowing technique and sensation. However, research compiled the electromyography during the stroke movement between on-water and stationary rowing aerometer has revealed difference. As a result, it is believed that the rowing motion on a station aerometer creates a distinct sensation compared to rowing on water. Against this backdrop, in recent years, there has been development in creating aerometers that simulate rowing movement on water. The innovation includes slide-based aerometers that move back and forth and dynamic aerometers with stretchers that move forward, aiming to replicate the sensation of rowing on water. A study comparing slide and fixed rowing aerometer reported that the slide rowing aerometer exhibits low maximum handle force, reduced rate of force development, and higher stroke frequency compared to fixed rowing aerometers. The current state of research indicates that constant results have not been obtained, and there is a limited number of studies available on this topic. The purpose of this study were to compare the handle and foot stretcher force as well as low rim joint kinematics during the rowing motion using fixed and slide type aerometers. Verify the characteristics of the slide type aerometers. Method 1, to speak briefly about the background of this research. The participants were 9 high school athletes. Physical characteristics include the test protocol for this study consisted of fixed and slide 2,000 meter time trial, respectively. The analysts covered 500 for this study. The fixed and slide type were measured after sufficient rest period to ensure that the athlete was not fatigued. As for the analysis method, handle pose during the dry phase was obtained from a load cell attached to handle. Stretcher force data were obtained from 2 force plates. We used a high-speed camera to take a picture, calculate positional coordinate data using previous motion analysis system. 4 markers attached each joint, performed laser analysis and used a 4-pulse butterworth low-pulse filter. The variables used in this study was slide and fixed equation with period test statistics. The next method shows the definition of angles. From the top, the definition are shown for the hip, knee, and ankle joint. Now I would like to share about the outcome from the research. First here show typical example of handle velocity, handle force, and stretcher force. The handle velocity, handle force, and stretcher force used in this study are shown respectively with the solid line representing the fixed phase and this line representing the slide phase. The drive phase defined as the time from 0 second to the finish drive. The recovery phase is defined as the time from the next finish to the catch. First, look at the handle velocity on the left side. The total time for the slide time is shorter than the fixed time in terms of handle velocity, and the drive time and recovery time shorter for the slide time. Handle force was statistically significantly higher than the slide time. The last stretcher force, rolling force, which is higher in the slide type than in the fixed type. Secondly, below compares the mechanical variables for the two conditions. In this study, the trials were conducted in 2,000 meter time trials, and no significant difference were found in each trial to trial total time. However, the drive time was significantly short for the slide type than for the fixed type. On the other hand, then there was no difference in recovery time between the two trials. Throughput frequency was also higher for the slide type than for the fixed type. The maximum stretcher force was higher for the slide type than for the fixed type during the drive phase. Third result, compare the joint angle under two conditions. Here the angular joint maxima in each phase. Maximum are shown for hip, knee, and ankle extension and flexion. Here the angular maximums for hip, knee, and ankle flexion, flexor flexion are significantly greater for the slide type. However, no statistically difference were found for the other extension, hip, knee, and ankle dorsiflexion. And lastly, the average pattern of stretcher force and joint angle on stroke for the two conditions is shown in the figure. This is show the stretcher force from the top low and the angular change of the three low extremity joint, hip, knee, and ankle. The horizontal axis represents 100% of the time in a stroke. The change in joint angle during the drive phase shows similar movement between two conditions. However, the stretcher force tends to be higher than that of the fixed type. Discussion 1. In this study, the stroke frequency was larger than that of the slide time. This is thought to be due to shorter driving time on the slide time. Short drive and recovery time during slide rolling aerometer stroke resulted in higher stroke frequency. The results of this study were similar to those of the previous study, as the slide time was found to have a stroke frequency close to the actual rowing on the water. Discussion 2. Rowing motion are comparable in both fixed and slide time rowing aerometers. However, significant difference in the force applied to the foot stretcher were observed. Although stretcher force joint angle were the same, slide type exhibit a larger force pattern than the fixed type. The slide type rowing aerometers may have increased the stretcher force by extensor limb muscle during the drive phase. So I took EMG data with n equal 1. The left side is fixed and the right side is slide type rowing aerometers. From the top row, tibialis interior, lateral head of gastrocnemius, vastus laterals, rectus femoris, biceps femoris, gluteus maximus, and spine. GL, VL, and BF tend to be discharged more than the fixed type, especially in the VL, which is related to the knee joint. The slide time rolling aerometer may cause the lateral head of gastrocnemius and bastard laterals to connect during the drive phase, resulting in greater stretcher force. On the other hand, bastard laterals activity near the drive finish was different in the fixed time rolling aerometer. The time of force exertion may be different in the fixed aerometer, although it performs a similar rolling motion to that on the slide aerometer. Finally, I would like to go with a conclusion after this research. Compared to fixed rolling aerometer, the slide type was characterized by higher stroke rate as well as greater stretcher force. Electromyography of ankle, knee, and hip extensor muscle were more active in rowing and slide type rowing aerometers. This result suggests that the rowing moment on the slide type aerometer may potentially be similar to the on-water rowing condition. Practical application. The slide rowing aerometer may be effective for training similar to water rowing on water due to its higher stroke frequency and stretcher force. Limitation and future research. A limitation of this study is that moment and joint power were not analyzed, which may require detailed analysis. Therefore, further study would be necessary to collect additional object data for clarification. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. The research was on the comparison of the mechanical output and lower joint kinetic during rowing motion using fixed and sliding type ergometer. Yes, thank you. It was to clarify the characteristics of the slide type. Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. We have a discussion time provided, so to our speakers, we'll kindly ask you to come forward to the podium. So to all the participants today, please feel free to give your opinions or ask questions, comments to the presenters today.
제가 간단하게 제 연구에 대해서 먼저 소개를 좀 시켜드리겠습니다. 지금 조정이라는 종목에서 지금 현재 지금 고정식이라는 에로메터를 지금 많이 사용하고 있는데, 지금 이 상단에 보이는 그림처럼 슬라이드 에로메터가 실제로 수상에서 비슷한 조건에서 훈련할 수 있는 환경에서 훈련할 수 있게끔 지금 개발이 됐는데, 아직까지 뭐 현장 필드에서는 아직 사용 빈도가 많이 적습니다. 그래서 제가 지금 하고 싶은 거는 고정식 움직이지 않는 에로메터랑 움직이는 에로메터를 지금 비교를 통해서 현장에 어떻게 적용할 수 있을까 지금 연구 진행하고 있습니다. 감사합니다.
I have seen some, yes. Can you please raise your hand if you have questions, comments? Yes. Thank you, Professor Oh.
Yes. I was just wondering if Professor Park and Professor Yoon, you consider the intensity of the power and resistance in your study. I mean, for the self leg movement and sliding technique of rolling movement. And I'm sure you have already considered the intensity of power and resistance. So can you answer, both of you? Thank you.
옥 교수님 한국말로도 한 번만 질문해 주시죠.
저는 이게 그 생리학이나 역학에 대한 이제 문양이어서 순수한 그 입장에서 이렇게 궁금증을 한번 이렇게 질문해 드렸습니다. 두 분께 그러니까 이제 스스로 발 움직이는 움직임이 거기에서 어떤 저항력이나 강도 이런 부분들을 이제 고려하셨는지 당연히 이제 하셨겠지만, 그리고 윤 교수님께는 슬라이딩 롤링 모션에서도 마찬가지로 어떤 저항력이라든지 파워 같은 것들을 고려해서 연구해서 당연히 이제 하셨을 것이고, 만약에 이제 그렇다면은 그 다음 단계까지 이제 제가 이제 조금 나중에 사적으로 한번 질문드리고 싶은 부분은 아까 현장에 두 분 다 이제 적용할 수 있는 뭔가를 이제 개발하신다라고 했는데, 그렇다면 운동 효과라든지 또 어떤 블러드 바스큘라 어떤 그런 것들을 조금 이렇게 혈류의 흐름이나 그다음에 근육의 양이나 그다음 움직임의 어떤 횟수나 뭐 이런 것들에 따라서 어떤 그런 제품들을 개발할 수 있는지 그런 질문을 드리고 싶었습니다.
네, 감사합니다. 지금 VO2나 최대 산소 섭취량이나 측정은 하지 않았는데, 지금 연구 결과에서는 그 슬라이드식 에로메타가 스트로크 빈도가 높기 때문에 물론 생리학적으로도 유산소 트레이닝으로서도 활용 가치가 충분히 있고요. 그리고 조정이라는 종목 자체가 일반 사람들은 잘 모르겠지만 상체보다는 다리를 많이 사용하는 운동입니다. 근데 지금 본 연구 결과에서는 슬라이드식 에로메타는 하체를 많이 사용하는 결과가 나왔고, 거기에 대한 아직 디스커션이 확실하게 지금 고찰되지는 않았는데, 좀 전에 EMG 근전도 실험을 했을 때 외측 광근이랑 비복근에서 슬라이드식이 좀 더 근 패턴이 보였기 때문에 슬라이드식이 유산소 트레이닝 그리고 다리를 사용하지 못하는 조정 선수에게 특화된 제품이라고 저는 생각하고 있습니다. 감사합니다.
Thanks for the excellent questions. So for the active movement, we use very minimum muscle activation because we only want to stimulate group 4. So we minimize the huge effects of the metabolite production. Because the study design was just the isolate muscle group 3 afferent activation and group 4 activation. So why I use this minimum exercise intensity? Because I try to develop some methodology to stimulate group 3 and group 4. So such as like a vibration plate or the passive stretching equipment. So we can use them if we can find the group 3 afferent activation can negate the negative effect of prolonged sitting. So I actually try to use the vibration plate because I had 13 hours of a flight travel from US to here, and I was sitting on for 13 hours. So if we can put any a small vibration plate or stimulate group 3 activation, the equipment in the airplane, we may prevent those negative effects of prolonged sitting.
Thank you. Yes, we have another question from the participants.
예, 안녕하십니까. 발표 잘 들었습니다. 한국말로 하면 되죠? 저는 한국운동역학회 회장으로 있는 임명태 교수입니다. 건국대학교 있고요. 오늘 오랄 프레젠테이션에서 이렇게 역학 관련 발표해 주셔서 대단히 감사드리고 질문 그냥 역학 관련 질문 좀 드리고 싶어가지고 지금 저 엘고메다 사용하신 게 2D로 하신 거잖아요. 2dimensional analysis. It's not 3D. 예, 2차원적으로 하셨고 또 2차원적으로 하신 이유가 특별하게 있는지 그게 좀 궁금하고 그다음에 이제 그 포스를 측정하셨는데 힘 측정하는 디바이스를 위에 어떻게 붙였는지 잘 안 들리십니까?
저 에로메타는 일본에서 커스텀 마이딩으로 직접 제작한 에로메타고 지금 제가 계속 스트레처 포스라고 했는데 스트레처 포스가 뭐냐면 다리에 탄력계입니다. 그 포스프레이터를 지금 양쪽에 지금 왼쪽 다리 오른쪽 다리에 설치를 해서 근데 포스는 Z 축밖에 측정이 안 되고요. 그리고 핸들 힘 같은 경우에는 그것도 직접적으로 제가 커스텀메이징 해서 100kg까지 측정할 수 있게끔 장비를 만들었습니다.
그럼 커스터마이즈 하셔가지고
예.
그리고 EMG는 그냥 샘플을 그 서브젝트가 9명이었는데 1명만 샘플 하신 거예요.
예, 감사합니다. 그 9명 했을 때는 특별히 뭐 좀 전에 말씀드리신 것처럼 디스커션 할 때 슬라이드식이 왜 다리 힘이 강하게 됐냐에 대한 고찰이 좀 증명하기가 좀 쉽지 않았습니다. 그래서 그 한 명 EMG 데이터는 제가 직접 조정을 하면서 슬라이드랑 고정식을 비교했을 때 그 고찰에 대한 에비던스를 만들기 위해서 급하게 EMG 데이터를 측정했습니다.
그리고 뭐 슬라이드 엘리베이터가 뭐 새로 나온 건 아니잖아요. 벌써 나온 지 오래됐고 사실 이 사용 많이 하고 있는데 뭐 지금 말씀하신 대로 저런 식으로 연구를 안 했기 때문에 이제 그게 이제 궁금해가 하셨다고 하는 거는 저는 인정을 했지만 슬라이드 엘리베이터가 사용 아무도 지금 최근에 안 하고 있다는 건 저는 동의를 못하는 게 상당히 많이 사용하고 있거든요, 사실은. 네, 그렇습니다. 이상입니다. 감사합니다.
감사합니다.
Yes. Thank you. Any further questions? Meanwhile, I have a question for Professor Park. Yes, I have briefly read some of your researches, and there has been many results. And I'm very curious, what are some future possibilities in adapting or applying these mechanisms on disease or disabled population?
Okay, thanks for the next question. So as I said, like the seating per se is like another small thing. So which means seating just increase cardiovascular disease. So if we can find some way to negate this negative effect of prolonged seating, probably we can prevent those cardiovascular risks. So such as the atherosclerosis or the plaque buildup in the leg blood vessels. So this is a big issue in U.S. and world these days. So U.S. government announced that more than 30% of age older 60s, they have the plaque buildup in their legs. They just don't know whether they are peripheral artery disease population or not. So if we can prevent this negative effect of prolonged seating in the earlier age, probably we can significantly reduce this peripheral artery disease or other vascular disease.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes. If we don't have any further questions, or if you do have further questions, you will have time to ask or comment later on in further sessions. For now, this will wrap up our session 1. We would like to thank two wonderful speakers today, Professor Park and Dr. Yoon. Please give a big applause. Thank you. We will take about It was supposed to be a 10-minute coffee break, but due to time, maybe a 5-minute coffee break, and we'll return for session 2. Thank you.
We will be starting the second session soon. Please be seated. Hello everyone. My name is Yoon Ho Nam. I'm an assistant professor at Jeju National University. I'll be chairing this session, Future Society and Physical Education. There will be 2 speakers, each presenting for 20 minutes. And then we'll have a Q&A at the end. I'm excited to introduce our first speaker, Professor Senlin Chan. He is a professor in the School of Kinesiology at Louisiana State University. Dr. Chan's research is focused on physical education curriculum and physical activity and wellness promotion. He will be presenting today on The Future is Now, Embracing Innovative and Sustainable Physical Education. Please give a warm welcome to Professor Senlin Chan.
감사합니다. Good morning. 안녕하세요 to everyone. Good morning. My name is Senlin Chen. I'm a professor in the School of Kinesiology at Louisiana State University in the United States. I'm honored to be a speaker today at the 35th International Sports Science Congress of the K-Third. Thank you, K-Third, for the cordial invitation. Dr. Yuno Nam and Mr. Changmin Lee for their assistance provided throughout the process. And my presentation today is titled Embracing Innovative and Sustainable Physical Education Programs. The Future is Now. Korea is an amazing country with rich culture and history. I've had several graduate students from Korea who are very bright and hardworking, and also many Korean friends who are fun and kind and passionate. 2023 is a very special year for South Korea, and for South Koreans and perhaps for all Asians, I would say. 35 years ago, in a few days, 35 years ago today, the Summer Olympics Games took place here in Seoul, South Korea. And yesterday, I had the opportunity to visit the Seoul National Olympic Park, and I'd like to take this opportunity to share some of the pictures I took at the Olympic Park, and had a chance to walk around after breakfast yesterday. And this is the beautiful city view of the site. And that's the Olympic flame, right? The Olympic flame remains on, and so does the Olympic spirit. So LSU is located in the state of Louisiana. I was born and raised in mainland China. I received my PhD in the United States. I currently work at LSU. I worked at Iowa State University for 6 years, and I'm starting my 7th year at LSU. So LSU is located in the state of Louisiana. It's a southeastern state of the U.S., right next to the Gulf of Mexico. So let me try to point out right here. So that's the Gulf of Mexico, and that's the state of Louisiana. So LSU is located in Baton Rouge, which is the capital city of Louisiana. Okay. LSU, my university, is famous for its athletic department. Okay. So LSU Tigers and the Lady Tigers have won a total of 51 national championships. And 46 of those championships are with NCAA. Okay. And LSU is most famous for its American football and the baseball programs. Although it has won numerous track and field championships with world-class coaches, athletes, and training facilities. LSU Tiger Stadium is a very important landmark in the state of Louisiana, and which is also known as the Death Valley. Tiger Stadium seats over 102,000 people, making the stadium the 7th largest stadium in the entire world. Schools are critically important settings to advance missions and goals of education and physical activity and health. Okay? Because schools are reasonable places for such interventions, such as physical activity and health promotion, because they can easily reach and impact over 90% of the school-aged children and adolescents. Physical education that is innovative and sustainable in nature presents students with wonderful opportunities for them to develop physical literacy and healthy living habits. Specifically has been considered, physical education has been considered as the hub within schools for promoting physical activity, physical fitness, healthy living habits, health and wellness. However, physical education is not the only setting within schools to advance public health or physical activity. Instead, promotion efforts can extend to other settings within schools, such as classrooms, recess, before and after school programs, etc. And the whole school approach is an initiative brought up by the United States Institute of Medicine in 2013. And this initiative proposed that physical activity promotion requires concerted efforts from the entire school, with extension to home environments and also the community environments. Okay? And there are opportunities of physical activity before school, during school, and after school. Ultimately, the goal is to help students, every student, to accumulate a minimum of 60 minutes of physical activity on a daily basis. And CSPAP, Comprehensive School Physical Activity Program, is a similar initiative to the whole of school approach, which stipulates that physical education is in the backbone of the physical activity promotion. But CSPAP should also consider physical activity before and after school. Physical activity during school, such as classrooms and recess, and staff involvement, and family and community engagement. Physical activity and healthy nutrition are very important to individual health and public health. In the United States, obesity is a pressing public health problem, and more than 40% of the American adults have obesity. And for the younger population, ages 10 to 17 years old, before the COVID-19 pandemic, the U.S. had 15.2% population with obesity, while the state of Louisiana alone had 22.2% of the population with obesity. Okay. So the really outbreak of COVID-19 pandemic made the obesity pandemic even worse. The younger populations and those with overweight or obesity were affected greater by the pandemic. As you can see, the spikes of BMI scores in the groups with severe obesity who are 3 to 11-year-olds. Now, the COVID-19 pandemic is behind us and the obesity pandemic lingers, unless effective interventions are available. As a kinesiology scholar, physical education scholar in particular, I'm mostly interested in physical activity. According to the World Health Organization, physical activity refers to any bodily movements produced by our skeletal muscles that require substantial energy expenditure. It includes things like sports, exercise, or conditioning, occupational activities, and other activities. And lack of physical activity is considered a leading risk factor for global all-cause mortality and numerous comorbidities and morbidities. Okay? And physical activity is a very popular terminology which has received exponential interest and attention over the last 10 or 15 years, with just over 4 million search results in 2018, and now the search results are over 78 million. If you go on do a quick search on Bing.com, I think the yields will be similar on Google search. Unfortunately, physical activity declines by age. As we get older, we tend to become more sedentary and less physically active. Both longitudinal data and the cross-sectional data have shown that older individuals tend to become less physically active, or they are not as active as the younger children. Children are born to be physically active. We love to exercise and be active when we were young. But however, as we get older, we tend to decline our physical activity participation. And the decline of physical activity is accompanied by rising sedentary behavior, especially screen-based sedentary behaviors, which sometimes is also known as screen time. And sedentary behavior, by definition, it means any waking behaviors characterized by energy expenditure that's equal to or less than 1.5 nets, but it has to be in a sitting position or a reclined position. And excessive sedentary behavior is detrimental, as you will learn from Dr. Park earlier. It's detrimental to our physical health and mental health. Sitting pills. You see some slogans here, right? Some images here. Sitting pills, moving hills. Sitting is the new smoking, as you learned from Dr. Park earlier. And sitting, excessive screen time is associated with greater risk of obesity. And lack of physical activity sometimes is mistakenly equated as too much sedentary behaviors. And these two are related, but they each are independent risk factors of health outcomes. A person can be active, they can also be sedentary. And I would be a typical example. I exercise on a regular basis, but I also sit over 6 hours every day for my job. Sufficiently active is defined as meeting the recommended levels of physical activity, and excessive sedentary is defined as failing to meet the recommended levels of sedentary behavior or screen time, for example. And this particular study from by myself and our group found that children who are 6 to 11 years old who are inactive and they're also exposed to excessive screen time, they often have significantly higher risk for obesity and also lower physical fitness. And similar results were found among adolescents whose risk for lower fitness is also higher if not being active with too much screen time exposure. And these are some backgrounds of the Proud Me intervention, which is the main topic of my presentation today. So Proud Me stands for Preventing Obesity Using Digital Assisted Movement and Eating. It is a childhood obesity prevention intervention funded by the Louisiana Border Regions and also the National Institute of Health. It is the latest intervention that's currently being tested in my laboratory. Okay. And Proud Me targets three health-related behaviors, which are physical activity, screen time, and diet. And the Proudme intervention follows a pretty sophisticated conceptual model as illustrated here on this slide. It is a comprehensive intervention guided by the socio-ecological framework. We aim to have each student make connections between their real-life community and their virtual community. Each student has a virtual pet that they attend to, and in the real world, they also receive Proudme physical education, health education. They socialize with their parents, teachers, and peers and friends, and all friends. In the virtual world, each virtual pet socializes with a virtual coach, peer pets, virtual pets, and also other characters within the virtual space. And the user and their virtual pets make smart goals, specific, measurable, realistic, timely, attainable, and timely goals, and track their goal progress and goal attainment in order to thoughtfully engage in the behavior management. And the ultimate goal of Proudme intervention is to increase physical activity, discourage sedentary behavior or screen time in particular, and then also improve healthy eating to ultimately prevent obesity. Okay? It is a multi-component and a multi-setting intervention with physical education, health education, the smarter cafeteria, smart goal setting and behavioral tracking, behavior management, and also the self-determination theory-driven social support, providing social support and seeking social support being the components. And we also emphasize three different settings, which are the school setting, home setting, and community setting. And the Proudme physical education is the main component of the Proudme intervention package. And Proudme PE has 12 lessons spanning 12 weeks with 4 lessons on physical activity, 4 on screen time, and 4 on fruits and vegetable consumption. And our plans have recently been adapted. The lesson plans have been refined recently. They are ready for implementation. And the curriculum unit focuses on education through the physical, not education of the physical. And we'll talk more about this later this afternoon in the ASP presentation. We focus on enhancing students' knowledge of healthy living, making rational decisions for their behavior management. And we have a nice platform, technological platform for them to engage in behavior management. And students have the opportunity to acquire learning in an enjoyable and active setting, classroom, and which require very, very minimal equipment. And Proudme PE also enables students to socialize in a positive way to foster intrinsic motivation according to the SDT. And long term is also a component. And in the long term, our research team measures the food environment of each cafeteria at each school using the smaller long-term scorecard. And we provide trainings to the long-term staff and empower them to improve the food environment of their cafeteria. One innovative creation of the Proudme intervention, however, is the technological system. This is an online platform for human-computer interaction. Each user will first register an account, and they will select a virtual pet, which can be a cat, a dog, a tiger, or a crawfish. Crawfish is very popular in the state of Louisiana and South. And they can practice smart goal setting for their physical activity, screen time, fruits and vegetable consumption, and even sleep time. And they track their behaviors on a daily basis, and they receive artificial intelligence-assisted feedback from the virtual coach, and they engage in reflection on their behavior progress and goal attainment. And their data are automatically tracked and saved in the back end, which is very helpful for us to quantify the process of implementation and also the degree of interaction or engagement. And the social support component of the intervention is guided and informed by the SDT. For time, I'm going to skip that. through the human-computer interactions, the virtual pet changes its appearance, improves its appearance based upon their engagement in the virtual space and the real world. Okay? We're working with the computer science team to develop this scheme which correlates their specific, the virtual pet's physical appearance change with the specific activities they do in the virtual space or in the physical space. Last but not the least component of the intervention is the ProudMe training. We provide the school implementation team with specific training so with which they will be able to implement the intervention components in their schools. Taken all together, the ProudMe intervention has some innovative and sustainable features as history tends to always repeat itself. And if we expect a bright future for physical education, school-based sports, or any school-based programs, and now is a good time to act, and the future is now. I conclude my presentation with sharing a few thoughts on what to do to be innovative and also to be sustainable. First, to be innovative, programs should be guided by robust theories such as socio-ecological framework. In the meantime, innovation means change through unconventional means, right? So it is important to think outside the box. Second, the mainstream philosophy of the physical education is education through the physical rather than education of the physical. And we should always think about what could be achieved through physical activity and through the strengthened physical body. Okay? And third, we live in an era that's infused with modern technology, and ProudMe intervention draws upon the use of AI-assisted technology, which is innovation. Okay? Lastly, for innovation, innovativeness, seek and sustain meaningful collaborations with experts from outside of the field, such as computer science, geography, so on and so forth, nutrition. We collaborate with research practitioners, policymakers alike to solve real-world problems. Lastly, in terms of having sustainable programs, in my opinion, it is very crucial to be visionary, always have a big picture, knowing the state of the field, and staying up to date with information and knowledge. And doing this will allow you to sustain the programs you have. And secondly, to sustain the innovative program, we have to consider the cost effectiveness of the programs. Okay? A cost-effective program is most likely going to be adopted for broader dissemination and implementation. Third, when it comes to sustainability, you need resources, right? And without resources, effective and innovative programs, no matter how effective or innovative they are, they cannot sustain. Okay. So, last but not least, find a balance between the top-down approach and the bottom-up approach. A completely externally imposed program often can receive local resistance, and they don't travel very far. Likewise, a completely internally designed program by teachers, for example, may not necessarily have the best accuracy or validity and then generalizability. Okay, they don't travel far either. So a sustainable program should consider both approaches, the top-down and the bottom-up approaches. Find an optimal balance between the two so that you can have sustainable long-term impacts on health, on outcomes that you want to focus on children and adolescents. So with this, I conclude my presentation. Thank you for your attention. 감사합니다. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the great presentation, Dr. Chen. It was very insightful. Please give Dr. Chen another big round of applause. We'll take questions. We'll take combined questions at the end of the presentation. Our next speaker is Dr. Tiffany Shan Hui Su. She is a professor at National Cheng Kung University in Taiwan, and Dr. Su's research specialty includes sports sociology, curriculum design in PE, and general studies in cultural studies. She will present today on the evolving landscape, exploring the intersection of sport culture and digital learning in Taiwan. Please give a warm welcome to Dr. Tiffany Shan Hui Su.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Tiffany Shi. As a professor now introduced me. I'm from National Cheng Kung University, Taiwan. And today it's my great honor to be here to present one of my recent projects. The title of my presentation is Evolving Landscape, Exploring the Interaction of Sports Culture and Digital Learning in Taiwan. In contrast to the early days of the internet, where websites merely offer static information for group users, the advent of Web 2.0 brought about the revolutionary transformation in sports culture. It has forced dynamic connection with content and facilitates extensive global interactivity, readily accessible on our screen, smartphone, mobile internet, and the rest of the social network. Nowadays, Web 3.0 is transforming the power of dynamic of Web 2.0 to creating bytes of data outside the content. It goes without saying that the race of sports is now enter a new era where the learners are known as digital natives. The new generation learners are equally exist, engaging in online conversation as they in face-to-face interaction, and their knowledge of digital landscape often exceeds that of their physical educators. Along with the development of Web 3.0, the COVID pandemic has significantly prompted educators and learners to reevaluate the concept of flexibility and autonomous learning. As a result, the sports landscape has witnessed a paradigm change in teaching and learning, a shift from the traditional physical classroom interaction to virtual connection facilitated by data and online platform. The pandemic crisis forced us to shift the educational paradigm to online teaching. The advantage of communication, collaboration, and learning across distance through digital technology are emphasized as a favorable tool, since not only panacea but also a source of innovation potentials. The paradigm shift through various online platforms becomes an emerging trend in delivering quality to PE globally. Transitioning from the well-established face-to-face instruction and environment to virtual ones is a great challenge for PE teachers, because the essential components of teaching PE is rooted in physical contact and movement exploration. Consider such a paradigm shift. This presentation will reflect on the needs of curriculum reform in teaching and learning to rethink the possible instruction technology in PE in the post-pandemic era in Taiwan. The change of a PE curriculum, according to Danwei, 1897 state that, quote, education is a process of living and not a preparation for future living, end quote. The idea of the process of living means living experience which is subject to consistent change with the change pattern of life. In other words, the process of education is continuously process of adjustment, and we have always to adjust and readjust ourselves to the environment. Similarly, physical education has been claimed to be socially constructed, and is a process of living reflect on the needs of contemporary culture. For its historical point of view in Taiwan, the goal of PE is practiced in particular place and a specific time. In early 20th centuries, the primary goal of PE was health and hygiene. The dominant goal of the 1920s emphasized social game-based objective. During the war, PE was almost a sole purpose because of its contribution to basic military training. The goal of total fitness was evidenced during the 1970s. In the 1990s, human rights, individual social freedom, equality, and independence defines the social sense. In the early 2000s, the concept of wellness focused on physical activity and disease prevention rather than the treatment of sickness. Recently, since the pandemic crisis, PE has shifted to a digital computation which focuses on flexibility and autonomous learning without particular place and specific time. The evidence of paradigm shift, the concept of flexibility and autonomous learning have been widely discussed in educational policy, pedagogical approaches, and habitus practice in Taiwan. Flexible learning becomes a key idea of remote teaching, while autonomous learning is taking consideration of building personal responsibility for individual education. For my previous studies, in a review of 22 related PE articles which collected from the Taiwanese database in the period of 2019 to 2022, offers us an example of how the concept of flexibility and autonomous learning facilitate in PE in the process of pandemic living. As shown in the figure, many cultures was emerged. That were autonomous learning, emotional affect, professionalism, the role of PE teacher, national body of PE, assessment, motivation, and distance teaching. The purpose of these studies was to investigate learning process of digital learners, specifically in cycling by analysis their sports performance. The study focused on how digital learners negotiate the sports knowledge they occur online with guidance from their PE teachers and coaches. A qualitative research method was adapted to understand the digital landscape in the sports world concerned the learning process of digital learners. 20 targeted students were recruited. Data was analyzed by using a Vivo 12 software. In the demographic backgrounds, a total of 22 students, which contain 10 male and 10 females, participate in the studies. Most of students say that they start to use technology such as playing games, watch videos in the elementary school. And most of the male students indicate that they own their personal smartphone while from senior high school, while female own their phones in early age of elementary. 1/3 of students from north part of Taiwan majorly in Taipei, and half of them from both central and south part of Taiwan. And 2 different types of sports was indicated from the students. One is self-learned exercise, and the other is school sports. The 3 major things have emerged. I call them 3R: redefining knowledge, rediscovering self, and re-enhancing sports experience. The first findings, redefining the knowledge that's impact on sports performers. Since the use of social media such as Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube has become a daily communication tool, the digital learners integrate digital resources with traditional coaches to enhance their sporting ability. In addition, the difference among Facebook, IG, YouTube were mentioned. 2 examples were provided here. One male student mentioned that, compared to IG, Facebook offers a larger space to provide more professional information. In the past, I followed some companies that also release important information on Facebook. In comparison to IG, the information on Facebook is more comprehensive and deeper. Similar to a female student described, Facebook and IG are two platforms that provide a considerable amount of information. Facebook tends to offer more serious content, sometimes without image. On the other hand, I know that IG also has some accounts that diligently manage sharing professional advice. However, I personally feel that IG doesn't present professional information as effective for me. Here is one of the influencer, Li Si, who the student mentioned. In his Facebook, each post shows his status of writing experience. And moreover, when students mention YouTube, they consider it as an instructional video for the sports learning. One of the male students said, when preparing for a trip, I learned on YouTube how to change the tire, how to handle the flat tire situation. So YouTube provides technical knowledge and also help find answers through videos. Another male student mentioned video computation. Usually YouTube has a series of links. It has own computation according to the contents. Similarly, a female student described, because YouTube usually recommends the highest traffic content, such as watching video of Li Si riding a bike, you can learn a lot from his the cycling experience. Here is the video shows how they learn the skill and information from the YouTube. The first from the biker, the second one is the Phoenix trainer. So you will see the video here. The Li Si will kind of put the map on the course and teach the audience how to ride the course and the specific technique or strategy you can ride for that. And the second one is Phoenix trainers.
第一阶段现在录一下，还没有看目前的跑姿动作吧
The subtitle is not shown.
OK， 准备。
Basically, it kind of recording the writing platform, the form for the writing jargon. So after that,
Next one.
He will kind of analyze the video clip with the runners and show them how to write properly, write correctly. So the second findings rediscovering self through digital data of body performers. Students understand their exercise performance with digital data, which also help them gain insight into physical capability and progress. In this regard, one of male students indicated that I believe recording digital data will enhance my motivation to keep exercising. Without data, I don't know my running performance while I'm running. With digital data, I can understand my sports performance and I share them with my friends. The most frequent used app was Strava. According to students, here is how they recorded their activity and share them using the app. Another one is Garmin Connect. Such data as heart rate, speed, distance, and time, while those whereby they evaluate themselves in particular exercise performance. Based on their individual data, students based on the individual's data, students will be able to make their own exercise plan. For example, a male student say that, with my biking data usage, I review my performance after I finish riding. Regarding the speed, the top speed during my ride will be my targeted goal for the next ride. For example, when I rode to Xingang and my top speed was around 40 km per hour, the 40 km per hour will be my speed goal to challenge myself or at least maintain the same pace. Putting pressure on myself like this, I could push myself to the average speed above 30. I will strive to go above the average as much as possible. Comprehending the digital data, thereby customized personal exercise program has become an emerging learning method for digital learners. Third findings enhance the sports experience through digital adaptation. Embracing digital tools, the learner transform their sports experience and adapted to a new way of engaging in athletic pursuit. Flexibility and autonomous learning was stressed here. One female student described, "I would consider badminton is my self-learned sport. Our department has a badminton team, directed by the senior. Typically, the senior will teach the fundamental skill for newcomers. At that time, I spent a lot of time for searching for relevant badminton skill online. During my freshman and sophomore year, I joined the department team. However, I got stuck in a situation I didn't want to continue playing. I feel either here or there lack of confidence, which led to lose the interest. After that, I took a regular badminton PE course. I came to realize that systematic learning instruction will be the key to improve my skill and made me to be aware of self-consciousness in learning. Another case shows how autonomous learning took place. Based on my personal writing experience, when I encounter a writing question, I will initially search for information online. However, when online resources are insufficient, I will turn to ask my experienced senior or cycling instructor for advice. When these answers resonate with my experience, I will immediately believe that will be the answer to my questions. Appearing both flexibility or autonomous learnings have proved to be as a key to motivation in a regular PE classroom. The idea of self-learning has created flexibility in the freedom of choices, while autonomous has played a core value of learning. So it comes to my last slides, my final remark. This study has shown the evolving landscape reshaping school sports in a digital revolution era. These findings offers valuable insights into the emergence of sports culture and digital learning, serving as a crucial platform for innovative reforms to adapt teaching approaches and meet the evolving needs of digital native learners. And thank you for your listening.
Thank you for the insightful presentation, Dr. Su. And please give Dr. Su another big round of applause. Dr. Su, please stay where you are, and I'd like to invite Dr. Chen back to the stage. Now, I'd like to open the floor for questions. If you have a question, please raise your hand and we'll pass the mic to you. Does anyone have a question from the floor? Okay.
Thank you. Both great talks. I have a question for Dr. Xu. Yeah. So for these young men, they use this new technology, digital technology to do their exercise and sports. Do you think there are many of them, or they are just a small percentage of the whole population, the young group?
In my case, this is more like a case study for college. So the 20s of them, yes, I think their experience from their young, very early, like preschool, they use technology through now. So I believe right now the digital learner, they will find a resource online directly at first step. They will do online searching rather than ask teacher the questions. Yes.
Does anyone have any other questions?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. My name is Anira. I'm from Indonesia, and my question is to Professor Shanlin Chen. So, in the first, I heard that you are doing a collaboration with the teachers to apply the application. How could you do that? Because in my case, Indonesia, that will be hard to collaborate with a teacher and the school itself to implement our product. Thank you.
That's a very good question. It's very difficult, and yeah, the short answer to your question is very difficult to work with school teachers or schools in general to get anything down, because school is a highly institutionalized place, and teachers are often overworked and underpaid, and they have and schools also have lots of competing interests. And if you're trying to implement something that's external, that's outside of the school, into the school, and then still in hopes of reaching the intended outcomes, it's very challenging. And however, we are very fortunate to have established a network of participatory network with many schools on board. So, and it takes time to build that participatory network, and I worked at Iowa State for 6 years, and I was very fortunate to build that strong network. And we had a number of elementary schools, middle schools, and high schools, been working with our research team, with our lab for a few years. And however, when we decided to move to Louisiana, that network was just gone. So we had to start from scratch in Louisiana with new schools. There's a lot of diplomatic or strategic actions you have to take. And first, schools have to see collaborations as beneficial to them. Okay, so obviously we as researchers, we believe that what we propose to do are going to advance knowledge, right? Kind of produce new knowledge and address research questions that are meaningful to the field, right? Can contribute to the literature. And in the meantime, we also have to think from their shoes, from their situation, that what through this collaboration, schools can benefit, right? So one thing we found a little bit easier to achieve, in terms of getting schools on board, is to provide them incentives. Okay? So through funded projects like our Proud team, and we offer schools incentives. We offer them, monetary incentives, and we provide schools with continuing education units, and so the teachers can receive credit from participating in our projects, because teachers have to receive those professional development so that they can get their license renewed every 5 years, right? So they get credits, and the teachers and participants, they also receive incentives for being participants, in our projects. But generally speaking, it's very difficult. But with the right approaches, oftentimes you can establish and solidify that network of schools. Right? So mutually beneficial, I think, is very, very critical, and it takes time to build that strong network.
So hi, I'm Rita. I'm coming from Indonesia also. So following the question coming from Anira, because I work as an educational consultant, I'm working with the public schools. So I have a question: is there any opportunity for us to your program is being used in private schools, because it's quite different, the system that we have in Indonesia between the government school and then the private schools. So is there any opportunity that this program probably could be adapted in Indonesia? Because if there is, probably I could talk to some of the foundation in Indonesia and then talk with them about this actually marvelous program, just to check, because in Indonesia we had the same problems too with their health and then the PE program coming from the teachers. So thank you.
Sure. Thank you. So that's the next step. So ProudMe use, it's still in the testing phase. Although we have done several projects, the world funding projects leading to ProudMe today, and we haven't had a true experimental study that has established the efficacy or effectiveness of ProudMe intervention. It's such a complicated, complex intervention with multiple components, and you also cross multiple environmental settings. It's complicated to have the full-scale implementation, evaluation of ProudMe. To do it properly, it requires substantial funding and resources. And yes, that's my next step. We have now with the funding from the U.S. federal government, and we are going to launch the full-scale intervention in the spring of 2024. And then after that, we're going to work on disseminating the intervention across the state of Louisiana and then across the U.S. And actually, earlier this summer, when I was visiting China, and I had a chance to, talk about some collaboration with schools in China as well. Yeah, so that's the next step, which is to test the dissemination of ProudMe and following the latest implementation science literature, which is a big thing, in the U.S. and also worldwide. Right? So, in the last decades, right? So, a lot of interventions, have been established, tested, funded by billions of dollars. Right? The goal of those interventions, following RCT design, is to test whether this intervention works. Right? And a lot of interventions work, and some don't work so well. Right? But at the end of the day, you have to answer the question: so what? Right? So if this intervention has proven with effectiveness, what's the next step? Right? Because most of these interventions are funded by taxpayer dollars, right? Taxpayer money. Right? So eventually, taxpayers have to benefit practically from their investments. Right? So the next step is to test the sustainability, the broader dissemination of those effective or evidence-based interventions. I'm happy that you're interested in, testing our ProudMe intervention. I will be happy to, stay in touch with you after our Q&A. And so thank you for showing your interest. Appreciate it.
We have one more question from the floor. Can you pass the mic to the audience on the back?
Thank you for your presentation. I have a question to Professor Su. I'm Ju Hyun-jin from University of Seoul. I have two questions actually. Flexibility in thinking and behaving and autonomous learning are key, steps for digital learning. I totally agree with that. but I'm a quantitative person, not qualitative. So I'm curious if you have any ideas to quantitatively measure those concepts of flexibility, thinking and behaving, and autonomy or autonomous learning. I know there are some questionnaire items to measure both of them, but other than that, wondering if you have any ideas for that. And second question is, curious if you have any particular theoretical framework to show the complicated mechanism of digital learning process.
Thank you for the question. That's a great question. For the first one, I'm more a qualitative research, so I think the mixed method could be work for future. So what I think is the quantitative research maybe is more like fundamental to design either a survey or questionnaire. For then when we do before the class, we can do the post-text, pre-text and post-text for that part. So that's the way maybe we can do for the future. For measure how the digital learners learn the concept change, maybe will be different things. So for the second question's mechanism, I am trying to build up the mechanism for that part. So I believe right now the digital learners, the way they learning is different from my generations. So the way they learning, we have to understand what's the purpose or what's the procedure or what's the process of their learning. So as a teachers, we can more manipulate these ideas, integrate into our curriculum. That's what I'm responsible to your questions.
We're right on time. Thank you all for your participation. I think we had some great discussion. I'd like to thank Dr. Chen and Dr. Su once more for their valuable presentation and discussion. Please give one big more round of applause for Dr. Chen and Dr. Su.